I walked into that famous biotechnology center that has developed the only medicine right now that's even being tested by a U.S. pharmaceutical for a very advanced and dangerous and aggressive brain cancer for children. And it's considered to be the most promising medicine for that kind of illness. And they have a lung cancer vaccine right now that's being used in Vietnam, China, and elsewhere. I mean, they have all kinds of incredible medicine that they're developing. And in 1993, when nobody was hardly eating at all, and this is in one of my other videos, these young scientists were developing all kinds of medicine and scientific development. No special pay. And this man was so skinny, it was shocking. He looked like a skeleton, a young scientist. And I knew he was skinny because he was eating. And he could have become a rich person in any other country. But he was there for his people. And they got through it. And he gained weight, you know, and they're all doing better now, but they are going to go through another severe test. And I think it's going to be very hard for them. The 500,000 people, they're not happy about it. But I highly doubt that there's going to be rebellions in Cuba. Because the people know that they have to work. I'm confident that, I think it's going to be very hard for them. No doubt. There's going to be a lot of problems as a result.
Do you think it's going to cause rebellion at all from these people?
You know, if you keep 500,000 people working in inflated workplaces with money that has no value, you know, if you have to print money to keep them employed, you're going to have to eliminate healthcare. I mean, that's really the thing. You're going to eliminate one thing or another. You're going to eliminate one thing or another. In the special period when they were about to engage in all this, in 1993, a lot of stuff happened in 1993. And in 1993, they had for the first time direct elections of the national parliament and the provincial parliament. They used to have them nominated from the municipal parliaments. You know, it was a parliamentary system and never direct in the national parliament. And in 1993, in the midst of all the difficulty, they said we're gonna make even more perfect our democracy. And they made the elections direct. And after they elected the national parliament, this is when they had to implement all these economic changes, layoffs for the first time, changes in the workplace, you know, all this kind of stuff that would cause some disruption, but bring money into and make them survive. And the national parliament said, we're gonna cancel our sessions. We're not gonna take these measures out and discuss them in the parliament. We're gonna take them to the people. And for the next several months, they held 83,000 workplace meetings in every workplace, in every school. And they called them workers' parliaments. And they went to the people and said, what should we do with these economic changes? And the people said, we want health. They said, should we keep health care or should we cut it down to save money? And the masses said, keep health care free. But the teachers said, we'll take a wage freeze. And the doctors said, we'll take a wage freeze. And the doctors don't make much money. And the students said, we agree, we want schooling free, but if we make less than C, we agree to pay for our school books. That was the students' offering. And they voted, get rid of the subsidized rum, because every worker would get a bottle of rum. They got rid of that. Rum is expensive in Cuba now. You know, it takes like about 3 weeks' wages to get a bottle of rum. But the workers said, this is what's important to us. And because it was taken to the people, you know, a lot of ultra-leftists, sometimes Trotskyist groups, sometimes, why are you all laughing? Okay, well, I say that just as a you know, talking about the currents in the movement. A lot of times they'll say it's not a work, it's a deformed workers' bureaucracy. There's also, no, I hear that a lot. I was in that movement too, you know. But they'll say things. It's not a democracy. It's top down. You know, Fidel brought the revolution. The workers didn't do it. Blah blah blah. I'll tell you something. I haven't ever heard of any example like that. And that's why there were no food riots, no fights. It was There was one disturbance in the whole time of the special period. And I'm talking, I went
There
one
was no
time.
violence either, that part.
There was no violence. There was no electricity. You know, people would have mosquitoes and no electricity at night, and their refrigerators would be destroyed because a power surge destroyed the refrigerator. People had nothing. I remember one time seeing my friends in the morning, and they said, all night, we fanned our baby all night so that the mosquitoes wouldn't bite on her. And it was boiling hot. And you didn't have that because the workers, the people of Cuba know that there's not a capitalist class above them. And they knew that everybody was sacrificing. God was alive, the God that was removed, be riding to work on his bike. He was skinny too. And his mother at one time said, Mijo, you know, when things got better, she said, I want to paint my porch. He said, no, mother, if nobody else can paint their porch, you can't either. Anyway, sorry, I got lots of stories. I'm telling you, you'd be very humbled by going to Cuba. Very humbled.
I'm sure.
I'll be the first to admit that I know very little about Cuban-U.S. relations, but I'd be interested to know what are the motivations of the U.S. officials in their continued blockade. Are they afraid of something? What's going on here? What do I not know?
Yeah.
Or is there not a clear motivation other than some continuation of frustration with Fidel or whatever?
Could someone else answer that, please?
I have a similar question.
Yeah.
What's the relevance of the triumphs of the Cuban Revolution today, and why has the U.S. culturally repressed it so much?
Why what? What has
Why has the U.S. repressed it? The influence of
Oh.
Cuba gaining independence so much.
Yeah. Well, in a very short nutshell, to put it another way, a lot of very well intentioned, liberal, progressive, a lot of prominent people, they'll say this, they'll go, they're very pro-Cuba, for Cuba's right to live, and they'll go, come on, we trade with communist China, we trade with Vietnam, they're communist countries, why not Cuba? But see, it's the tactical approaches of the U.S. imperialists, depending on the circumstance. They can't blockade China because it's the biggest market in the world for them. They desperately have this economic relation. They may have their economic fights with China, but in the end, they'd like to undo China as well. The 1989 incident, the U.S. really, at some point, will want to break China up. They blockaded Vietnam for many years that people aren't even aware of. They caused great destruction, some say even more than the war, until they finally lifted the blockade partially. But with Cuba, they see Cuba as something that they can just smash. The influence I think Cuba's influence is far greater than Vietnam's in the world, far greater than China's in terms of revolution and hope for Latin America. And I don't mean even just revolutionary overthrow, but starting to break away from the empire's hold in the international fora of Latin America. It's very dangerous for the U.S. The U.S. capitalism has to seek ever more markets and favorable conditions for their export. What are all the free trade agreements for? And if you have Argentina, Venezuela, and a growing number of countries rejecting the NAFTA, the CAFTA, and all those other stupid agreements, it takes them out of the sphere of U.S. capitalism. So what seems to be a, contradiction, like, look, all the hotel companies, the telephone companies, communications, oil companies, they want to trade with Cuba, and all agribusiness, ADN and Monsanto, they want business in Cuba, and they sell to Cuba.
Why do they want, so you're saying all the companies want business?
U.S. corporations, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, speaking for U.S. business, want corporations will sell where they say, sell the rope to hang themselves, you know? They will, they'll do anything to make a buck. They all see that individually their interest in having business in Cuba, they don't want out of it. But the state of this country says, wait a minute, you all hold off for a while. Soon we will overthrow that revolution. And then not only will Cuba be open to you, but there'll be no more challenge in Latin America. That's really the long vision of it. That's why what seems so illogical and so outrageous continues, even through Obama's administration, but in a more sophisticated